So this will be the second part of my lecture on fiscal management. Some of the things that we'll be talking about are benefits and some of the laws concerning benefits and what you do have to provide for your employees. Enrollment and scheduling. So kind of how can you afford for benefits by bringing in income or staffing appropriately for the enrollment that you have so that you're not spending out more than you need to. Internal controls, which I brought up in the discussion board last week, which is ways that we can save money. And then ways to be creative, and I'll talk more about that at the end. So financial management is a skill, and when I talk about skill, what I'm really kind of talking about is the idea that you need knowledge, so you need to have some kind of background in finances, fiscal management, number sense, that type of stuff. But more than that, you need to have practice. So you're taking these things that you're learning and you're putting them into practice and you're using it on a daily basis, and you need support. So, I mean, I could really call anything a skill, you know, within our industry. So knowing how to do lesson planning is a skill. You need to kind of know the basics of developmentally appropriate practice, stage theory, just all that child development stuff. And then you need to practice it because your first couple lesson plans never really go that great. And you need to try things out. Some things go really well with 3-year-olds and then some things bomb with 3-year-olds. And then you typically need support from your management as well in order to implement those. So you need money, you need time, you need resources in order to implement your lesson plan activities into the actual classroom. So that's an example of how we're using something and how we're working towards a skill all the time. You're not just born as a child development expert knowing how to do lesson plans. You need these things in order to be able to be a good teacher and a good lesson plan person, and having to implement curriculum into a classroom with real live breathing humans that are 2, 3, 5, 1, something like that. So this is the same type of thing. So since this is a child development class that doesn't have a lot of child development information in it, we're talking a lot about management and supervision. This is a skill. So you do need knowledge. You need to be able to know the basics of being able to add and subtract and then also how to use some kind of system. Excel can be really difficult for some people, and that's why there's Quicken, QuickBooks, there's payroll systems, all those types of things where they kind of take out the guesswork for you. You need to be able to practice this. So if this is a goal of yours, is to have your own business, to run your own program, even if your budget, let's say you're Head Start site supervisor or program director, your budget is coming from Congress, basically. They're allotting a certain amount of money to you. You still need to practice this type of stuff because you need to have the ability to run your program on a budget that you are given by somebody else that can fluctuate wildly. When I was in the Marine Corps, it was feast or famine. Literally, I could be given $30,000 on one day, and for 16 months after that, I would be given no money. I mean, I had money for staff to pay them, but any kind of other resources or things like that, you wouldn't have money for months, years, things like that. So I needed to learn how to live in that kind of situation, even though the money was kind of play money. Like I wasn't handing out cash, I wasn't writing my name on the checks, but I still had to have a lot of control over what we spent in order to be really responsible about it. And then you also need support. I don't know what's going on with health insurance. Everything is in flux with that. Payroll is not, payroll taxes and things like that. We're not even going to get into that because you need support from payroll person or a payroll system that you're paying into or the state government in order to do those types of things. So you also need to have a support system of people that you know that you can call, the numbers of departments and divisions at Sacramento who can support you, that type of stuff. So that's just kind of my introduction, is that this is something that if you are going in this direction, these are the types of things that you'll need to be able to practice. We are going to talk a lot about benefits. Last week, I kind of touched on it when we talked about wage matrices and how to pay people and how minimum wage is changing. Minimum wage will kind of change our benefits. I'm going to cover some of the laws with what you need to have as far as vacation time and sick time, but you also need to think about what you can provide as an organization, as a nonprofit, as a for-profit, as a small business. What can you provide for benefits above the law? And then how are you going to track and calculate it? Because that's a lot of times people just give these things willy-nilly and they're not really sure about why they're doing it. They don't have a policy themselves. So vacation plan law in California. So there's no legal requirement in California that you have to give paid or unpaid vacation time. So that we'll talk about sick time. Sick time is a law, but vacation time, that type of thing there's no law on the books as far as this. But if you do start to provide it, and it is a package that you provide to your employees, then it needs to be the same for all employees unless they're with you a long time, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, and you have to keep track of it. So if you do provide it as part of your benefit package, so if you are providing vacation or paid time off as part of your benefit package for working for you, it needs to accrue. It needs to add up as it's earned, and it cannot be forfeited. So even if you fire somebody under really bad situation like child abuse or something terrible within the classroom, you still have to pay that out at the end of their termination. It cannot be forfeited. You cannot take it away for bad behavior or as a consequence or under termination. So if it adds up, then it has to be earned. The employee can take it, not necessarily when they want to. It still is part of their negotiation process. They have to ask for time off, and then you grant it to them. But also in California, paid vacation is a form of wage. I'm not sure how that differs from state to state, but here in California, it's a form of wages. So it's earned as your labor is performed. So if you're working 40 hours a week, you might accrue half an hour of vacation time, something like that. So an employer's vacation plan may provide for the earnings of vacation benefits on day to day, by the week, by the pay period, or some other period basis. So then there's paid sick leave, and this is a law. So employees accrue 1 hour paid sick leave for every 30 hours worked. So paid sick leave carries over from year to year, but you can cap it at 48 hours or 6 days. So most of your employees, if they're working full time, are working more than 30 hours a week. So you can cap it at 6 days. Then that's kind of the not use it or lose it, but use it and it stops accruing, that type of thing. It also begins after the 90th day of employment. So the Department of Industrial Relations, this is where I got their information from. If you are in a field where you need to keep track of this and you need to know what the law is, I have linked for it here for you guys. It's called the Department of Industrial Relations. They cover wage theft, people, all types of people from all kinds of workers, like people that are migrant workers, people that are undocumented workers, people that work in classrooms, that type of, they cover all employment in the state of California, and they're really dedicated to protecting workers' rights. And so they have all this information. And then for people who are business owners, they have frequently asked question pages where they talk about this type of things. So going beyond the law, so we know that, so AFLAC, that Duck AFLAC, they have, so they're an insurance company, so they also do a bunch of reports and stuff like that, and they call a bunch of workers. And so they talked to people who were employees, and 68% of workers who are satisfied with the overall benefits package are also satisfied with their jobs, compared to only 5% of workers who are satisfied with their jobs but not satisfied with their benefits package. So we know that better benefits packages sometimes can help out in industries where we have maybe lower wages. So we as a whole make much less than kindergarten teachers, elementary school teachers. We typically have a little bit less education. They have teaching teaching degrees, which are 1 to 2 years more after a 4-year degree. But we typically have quite a bit of education that's under our belt and experience, but we are paid much less than them. That is changing with minimum wage laws will be changing over the next couple of years, but sometimes we can do benefits packages that will compensate for kind of our lower paid wages, and I want to talk about that a little bit. So your vacation plan, I was talking about how it can accrue. So this is kind of at the bottom how you accrue or add it up. So a 10 work days entitlement per year, so that's 8 hours a day, so that's 80 vacation hours per year that you could be working. Or 80 vacation hours per year divided by 52 weeks per year. So that means that every week that you work full time, you're making a day and a half of vacation time. So those are ways that you can accrue it or start to plan out how you give it to your staff. A good way as well as benefit packages is that it accrues more the more time you have spent in your organization. So your first year, you might get no vacation. You get your paid sick leave, which is part of California state law, but maybe you don't get any vacation or you get a day or two. After 2 years, you get 2 weeks vacation. Year 3, you get 3 weeks vacation, and then 4 years. I mean, that's a really gold standard. If you've had somebody for 4 years, you probably have a good working relationship with them. They're doing really good. They're passing all their evaluations. They're probably on their way to becoming a lead teacher, a mentor teacher, or just kind of an experienced person in your program. I would hope at 4 years. If not, then you might want to reconsider your employment relationship with them. But if they are a good person, then 4 weeks vacation is a great perk. It's a really significant amount of time. You can take time throughout the year. So that is definitely something that people should consider. The thing with vacation plans and sick times, paid times off, however you want to kind of talk about it, is that you do need to calculate those costs when you offer something like this. So you're either having subs in the classroom to make up for that, plus that person is being paid, but they're not there, and you're having to pay a sub or rearrange schedules and have people work more, aides work more, or you're in the classroom taking away from your ability to run the center. So you do, in whatever way you're going to cover for that person and however it is paid, you need to cover that cost, and it needs to be part of the budget projections that you have. So in this kind of benefit package, you would have people that are all at all of these different stations. You have brand new hires that you're not really having to worry about vacation, it's just paid time off. And then you'd have people that are all within kind of this matrix. So you are having at the beginning of the year, when you're putting your budget together, saying, okay, this person, 5 people have 2 weeks vacation, 7 people have 3 weeks vacation, and 2 people have 4 weeks vacation. This is the money that I'm going to have to pay out for them, even though they're not working. And this is what I'm projecting that I'm going to spend in subs or aides or something like that in order to cover their absence from the classroom. And that's also why I also like to put in my employee handbook that, if you know that you're going to be in Alaska on a cruise, or you would like to, and you're planning this out 8 months in advance, please let me know 8 months in advance, or let's think about it then, because then I can plan for those types of things. I can plan for aides, I can plan for subs, and I can put that into my budget as well. That when in August I'm going to have a lot of staff out or something like that. Let's switch over to healthcare, although this is a really difficult thing to talk about. A couple of years ago, it would have been less difficult because we had the ACA, which is the Affordable Care Act. It was difficult. There are mandates for employers that they have to provide healthcare, or they get a tax penalty, which was popular or unpopular depending on who you're talking to or the states. I don't want to talk about the politics of it. Let's just say that it's quite a bit in flux right now. I don't know where it is headed. I don't know where it is right now. All I know that is 2 years ago, when we did still have it, the average small business plan purchased, let's say for 5 people, cost $1,400 a month in premiums. So that it was about $280 per person, and these monthly premiums were then split between the employer and the employees. So typically when you come aboard and you do have healthcare as a benefit, you're told you have to pay this much. You pay $115, and your employer is going to pay $130, and that covers the cost of the healthcare premiums. Right now, it's really difficult to kind of understand, because not only do we have federal law, but we also have state law. So let's just say that healthcare is definitely in flux, and if you are going to provide this, you absolutely are going to need a human resources consultant or a healthcare consultant. There's brokers, there's groups, there's things like that. There are a whole groups of people and organizations that are dedicated to helping small business owners kind of provide healthcare benefits. I did want to talk about this. This is from the Kaiser Family Foundation. They're a fantastic research group that is part of Kaiser HMO program, but they have their own kind of family research group where they look at healthcare, they look at mortality rates, just health outcomes in general. I use a lot of their research in some other classes that I teach for Cal State. But they kind of looked at this because they're obviously an HMO, so they are interested in what health rates people have. So I think the most interesting thing, though, is So what we all kind of know is that small businesses, so 50 people to 25 people and under, have the least amount of ability to provide or are not providing healthcare benefits. It's only at 54%. But more than 100 workers, you are 97%. So most large businesses and large nonprofits are making healthcare one of their benefits packages in order to take care of their employees. That also makes jobs a lot more desirable. I know a lot of people who want a Costco job because it's great benefits, or don't want to work at other large corporations because they've heard they have bad benefits. So this is a way that we can make ourselves competitive. If you were to find ways that you could share the cost of healthcare with your employees, then that would make you more competitive. And that's why you need to go to a consultant or a broker or somebody like that who can help you figure out where healthcare is right now and then how you can in the future try to provide this for your employees. Another kind of benefit is called in-kind or fringe benefits. And what it is like non-wage compensation. Like for me, working at Palomar, I get the student gym is like $10 a month for me in order to go that. So it's deeply discounted because they want me to be a healthy instructor. And that's also like a fringe benefit. Typically within our field, it's a discount on childcare. So you might be in the infant classroom, but your 3-year-old is going to that school for 50% off or something like that. There's also discount on services, and that's what this image has: meal plans, athletic facilities, discounts, stock options, moving expenses, transportation expenses. So typically what we'll see is athletic facilities, like they'll partner, if it's a nonprofit, with like 24-hour fitness, and you get 15% off of your membership at 24-hour fitness or on your phone bill or something like that. But for our smaller business owners, it really comes down to these discounts on childcare. When you're calculating this, though, it's still money that you're losing. It needs to be tracked in your budget. So if you are offering a 3-year-old position, a 3-year-old spot in your 3-year-old classroom to one of your staff members at a 50% discount, that's money that you need to keep track of, because that's half an enrollment on one of your spots that you're not going to be getting. You are earning it back, and I think it's a good thing in that that person is there. They probably are going to want to stay with you, at least for the duration of their child needing childcare. We know this can be a low-wage field, so this encourages people to work for you if their child can be placed in another classroom. But we do need to, it's considered part of their taxable income, of your taxable income, and so you need to keep track of it. And also, if you have 2 children in your classroom who are at 50% discount because their parents work for you, then that's a whole spot that you're not getting income from on your classroom. And so you always need to consider that instead of 12 preschoolers in one classroom, it's 11 now. And you're going to have to project your budget on only getting the enrollment money from only 11 students instead of 12. And then it's also part of your taxable income as well. So I've talked about all of these benefits. We know that minimum wage is changing. So now I kind of want to shift gears and I want to talk about ways that we can save money and ways that we can get creative and make money in order to provide benefits and in order to kind of deal with just the changes that we are having in our field. So really what I'm doing is I'm looking at enrollment and regulations. I'm balancing full-time, part-time, and aides. And really, at the end of the day, we have a cap in the ability that we can have to make money. So at Wendy's or Walmart or something like that, there's no real cap. As long as they have the food and they have the supplies, they can sell and sell and sell and sell. We can bring an income, but only to 12 people in a preschool classroom, or 4 infants, or 16 school age, or whatever the regulation, whatever the amount of children that we can get into a classroom is. So that caps how much money we can make unless we are willing to increase our prices. So I just want to talk about this really fast. So I'm going to click out of this again. I'm going to go here. Back. Okay, so a lot of you as teachers are asked to keep track of how many children you have as they enter into your classroom and how they leave every day. Maybe you are part of this process then, or maybe you're not. Maybe you turn it into your director, your site supervisor, your program director, and they use the information. What they are trying to figure out is when are the children coming, when are they leaving in a classroom, and then as a whole. Because one of the things that I always see, I feel like I'm like the Gordon Ramsay of childcare sometimes, like that Kitchen Nightmare show where he comes in and he like looks at how people are running the restaurants. I sometimes struggle when I am going to schools, preschools, childcare, things like that, as just like a mom or a person in the community, is I see things, and because I've done this for a while, I always have my own thoughts that I try to keep to myself about how much better they could be running their center. So sometimes that I see is I'll see a lot of staff members early in the morning or late at night when we don't have as many children. So you should be looking at changing your schedules in order to better meet the needs of your program. And also, why are you paying people to be there if there are not as many children to be supervising? So I just kind of mocked this up really, really fast. So what it is just the time that we're open, and I had it 6 to 6. The children, so I'm not doing it by name, just how many children there are, and then how I would have my staff members throughout the day. And this would also include end of shifts, lunches, that type of stuff. So I have a full-time teacher who comes in at 9 because that's when most of my children are coming. So let's say we have early day that you can pay extra for, but most people are doing like a state subsidized program from 9 to 3. So then that full-time teacher who has a degree, who has a permit, who I pay the most, is there for that shift and when the children are there. In the morning, when people are paying a little bit money for AM or PM care or extended day care, I have an aide with 12 units, something like that, or maybe even a permit, but she is paid less than my teacher is, and she is there from 6 to 1, so she doesn't work a full day either. So this is kind of how I work this type of thing. So there's a lot of times when there are only a few kids, like 10 kids, so I only have 1, and then I have 3 staff. And this also does when they can go to lunch, and then when their end of shift is, that type of stuff as well. You can also switch it. You know, sometimes it's not fair to the aides that they're being asked to work shorter hours, so you have to negotiate that with your own particular staff members as well. If they don't want to be, if they want to work full-time hours, how can you have them work full-time hours? Can they go to other classrooms? Can they start in there? Are they more of a float? They start in the preschool classroom, and then they go and do infant breaks and lunches, you know, that type of stuff. So moving the staff as you need to in order to meet the needs of your enrollment, not just the program as a whole. You're assuming that you have all enrollment at all points of the day. You don't. You have enrollment at different times. So if that's a way that you can share some of the costs in order to provide benefits or to meet the needs of the minimum wage changing, then that's something that you should consider. It's something like this. Once again, I have this. If you guys would like to, then I can send this to you. And then I also wanted to share my wage matrix. So this is what I showed you guys last week. This isn't an assignment this week, so don't worry. I'm just showing you how I added to it. So once again, this is the wage matrix. It goes up by 10% for every time you get a bump in your education. And then also as well, it goes up to 10% as you are more experienced or you've spent more time in the center, except for our aides who kind of top out at $16. So then this goes along with over here where you can change it. So what I have done, so this is what you guys saw. Yes, last week is benefits. So this, we take this amount of money and we add 25%. So this gives you a more accurate reflection of what it actually costs to a person to run a classroom in their center. And I added 25%. That's payroll, taxes, insurance, premiums, benefits, fringe benefits, all that type of stuff. 25% is my median number of, like, I'm thinking a group of 100 who's most likely a nonprofit who has a mix of different income revenues. So they provide social services, they provide education, stuff like that. They have an accounting department. So it's a larger kind of organization. If you were a FCC provider or a very small business owner, or you only had like a church preschool where you only had a couple of classrooms, this would be much less. It could be 10%, something like that. If you are with the state government or the federal government, this might be even more because your wage matrix and your steps that you go up changes a lot. And then the benefits that you can provide, that's typically why we like those types of jobs, is it's great benefits and the employer pays more of those kind of premiums for us. That money is coming from the state or the federal government. It's approved by Congress and those types of things though, but it is still, this is just kind of my median number. So you can see if I'm spending $170,000 on just annual salary, once you add in taxes and benefits, it goes up by a certain amount of money, and you're spending $20,000 to $30,000 more depending on the type of organization you have. I'm going back. Okay, so I do want to talk about internal controls. I brought this up last week in the discussion board because somebody was talking about how they're kind of given a budget and they have to work within it. So what are ways that you can control what you use in order to be fiscally responsible with the amount of money that you're given? So you're given $50 every other month, you're given $5,000 in a lump sum for the entire year. What kind of money are you given? How can you use that money as responsibly as possible? If you are a teacher or a site supervisor, any kind of position, we should always kind of be aware of what we're using. So inventory, actually knowing what you have. So a lot of times you don't have one closet, you have 7 cabinets or something like that. So knowing how much blue paint do you really have? Do you need to do more? Or is this blue paint going to get you until 2019? How much paper do I have? Is my iPod player going to last? So what supplies do I have? What supplies do I think I'm going to need? And what things might need to be replaced, like radios or iPod players that are really more expensive than other things. Comparing prices as well. A lot of times we get used to Lakeshore. It's super easy to order through Lakeshore or Oriental Trading or whatever those types of things are. Sometimes you can actually get things cheaper at Walmart or Amazon or other places like that. So kind of comparing, shopping around, using discounts or coupons or things like that. And if you were a teacher, if you don't have your own accounting group or purchasing group, sometimes very large organizations like Head Starts or military or something like that have people that buy things for you, and this is their entire job, is to compare, shop, bulk when possible, all hidden costs, all that type of stuff. But if you're a smaller group and you get a lump sum or a certain amount every month that you're allowed to spend, if you were to compare prices and find coupon codes and take that to your site supervisor or your program director, they would probably be really happy that you were looking out for them financially and fiscally, and that would show that you have a real interest in helping them, so you might want to consider that yourself. Bulk when possible as well. I was a sub for an FCC provider when I was in college. So that's the kind of my knowledge of FCC providers was on my breaks or after school or things like that. I had a neighbor who ran a large family home as a provider, and I would sub for her teacher or her when she was on vacation because I had all of my units at that point. The biggest thing she ever learned was she built a shed in her backyard, and that's where she kept all of her things that she bought bulk as possible. So before that, she was kind of sharing the cost. She would buy toilet paper for her home, but then the children would use it. So now she had her own toilet downstairs where her little school was. And so toilet paper, printer, copy paper, like all of this stuff went into a shed, and that was just specifically for her school, and that kept receipts completely clear for her. So it wasn't like she was splitting the cost or she was highlighting, this is for my family, this is for my school. Everything was really clean and clear for her so that she knew what she was doing. So bulk when possible, going to Costco and buying 1,000 things of toilet paper or something like that. Or one time on the military system, I got kind of a call like spend $3,000 right now. So I got 50 radios with like the little iPad thing, and they were really nice, and they had gotten really good reviews, and we had storage capabilities for it, and so we stored those for years and years and years because I had the money at the time. I knew this was a really good deal, and the more that you bought, the better deal that you had. That's a pretty rare situation that you get a lump sum amount of money, but it worked out really well for us because that's something that when you are playing music all day long or a lot or every, for a significant amount of your day, then that's something that's like a cost that you run through. Also sustainable practices, so avoiding waste, recycling, even taking cans to the recycling center, reusing a lot of things like spare or loose parts in the classroom, asking parents to bring in cork or wrapping paper or things like that so you can use collages. Those are kind of sustainable practices. And then also with sustainable practices is California is quite green, so a lot of groups have the opportunity to switch over to solar. There are some programs that will give employers rebates or things like that if they were to put solar onto their roofs. I think in the next couple of years we'll start seeing grid independence where you would have your own kind of system within where you would use your own power. And then also a couple of years ago, and the program still exists but not as big as it was in 2015, where you could take out your entire lawn. But that is something that we can consider. It can be really cost effective to get rid of your grass. And then you're not having somebody come every 2 weeks to cut it. You either have the fake grass or out front you just have succulents and bushes and stuff like that. So then maybe every other month you're weeding or you're having a guy come out and weed. So it saves you in time and labor, and it also saves you as far as having to pay those types of things, especially for our people out in San Marcos, Escondido, Ramona, East County, where it gets boiling, baking hot for about 5 months out of the year. Getting rid of those things that you're having to pay water on can save you as well. And that's the hidden cost as well. So having grass, what is the hidden cost of having to maintain and keep up with grass? So policies and procedures. So doing business with family is super tricky. I'm going to shift that to our last session, which is working with the community and the family. I have an article for you guys on how do you kind of approach families when they're not paying. We'll talk about late fees because you need to start off in a customer service kind of framework, but you need to get paid. That's really what it is at the end of the day. And we'll talk about kind of policies and procedures that you can have that you need to make sure that your parents have signed and probably sign each year, and absolutely sign whenever you change your tuition or your late policy, anything like that. But you need to decide what you can afford as far as benefits and enrollment and scheduling, and you need to have that communicated in writing for your staff. It needs to be the same for all staff. Somebody can't, unless they've been with you longer and they're working at the vacation thing, they can't get something that somebody else kind of gets. Benefits, especially healthcare benefits, kind of have to be the same depending on hours that you work and things like that. But it's great to know what you can afford, write it as a policy, and then communicate that with your staff either before they are being hired, so they know, can I take this job? If I'm making $13 an hour, but you don't pay healthcare benefits, or I'm only going to get 3 days of leave each year, is that worth it for me? Should I take a lower paying job that has better benefits? Should I, what kind of things can I do? So letting staff know before you hire them so that they know what those are. And then for staff that's already been there, if it's changing, it's open enrollment this month. So my husband just got done with the HR meeting because their HMO and PPO are changing across the board in all industries. And so we've had to make some difficult decisions as a family ourselves about what kind of HMO or PPO we want to enroll in. So you might not have the wherewithal to have a full-time HR person, but you can have consultants and things like that who can come through AFLAC or through HR groups who can come out and who can help you discuss this with your employees. They'll have more information. HR is a degree. That's what they spend their time in, is communicating these types of things and helping you decide what you can do. So I do want to talk about this kind of creativeness. This is an idea that I've been thinking about for a while. I think that philosophically, conceptually, whatever, the days of just running a 9-to-5 school are really kind of over. I think the millennials and children that have grown up in the 90s and 2000s who are now having children of their own have a really different idea about education and involvement. They are more aware of child development than ever before, I feel like, and they really want to prioritize their children's education and care. And then through the state and the federal government, a lot of us have mandates to provide parent education or involvement with parent advisory groups or providing education for them, or a lot of programs it's expected. So we're having a lot of needs from our parents, and then we are needing to change because of minimum wage laws and healthcare laws. So we need to meet that these things are changing, and we need to evolve ourselves. So I don't know, this is just kind of things that I've seen from successful programs that I've seen over the county, is that they are either meeting a niche need, like they're homeless or very at-risk, or drug and alcohol abuse, at-risk children, that type of stuff. Or they're like churches and they have their rent covered, that type of stuff. And they do like little mommy and me, that type of stuff. But I think for a wide variety of us, we need to get a little bit creative. So what are ways that you can kind of boost income? I think the extracurricular classes, I've seen those be really popular, where your child goes to school for 7 hours a day, but they have soccer come in at from 3 to 4, and you can pay through your tuition, it gets increased so that your child can go to this soccer camp or something like that. For working families, it's a fantastic way. The child care typically gets a cut of it because they're providing it there. And then that actually kind of gives your teachers a break as well, because they have less kids, because maybe half the class goes out and does the gym bus or the soccer clinic or whatever it is. And then working parents really like that they're maybe if you're getting off at 5:30, you can't always take your child to soccer practice when they're so young. So having this kind of meet the need of a working families can be a great way to kind of boost some of the money that you're making. Camps as well. So if you have a school age program doing camps over the summer, but you can have them pay a little bit more to go to pottery or something like that. There's very extended day. I talked about it in 150 last week, but a Discovery Aisle or something like that moved in across the street from an established program that had been there for years, and all of a sudden they're doing really extended day. So you can, if you give them enough notice, the child can stay there until 9 p.m. and I think they can be dropped off at 5 a.m. You have to do it in advance and you pay for it, but it is a very extended day, which for some families that sometimes have some untraditional schedules, that can be a really good way. Then weekend programs, and I've seen this at a lot of programs throughout the county as well, is you kind of do a license exempt program within your child care facility. So it's like a mommy and me, like you come and you learn about child development or you observe your child. They have that in Maricosta. You can learn about STEM, art, and gymnastics. So they're like people are private consultants or private groups are running these types of programs for you within your child care facility, and it's license exempt. Parents' Night Out is huge, and typically that kind of cash goes to your staff. So you rotate who gets to do Parents' Night Out every month, and those staff members pocket the extra cash, and that's a great alternative budget. It costs you very little. It costs you in electricity and that type of things, but it's a way for your staff to make a little bit extra money on a rotating basis. So I think that's just ways that we have to think about how this is changing, that parents and working families want to enrich their child and have extracurriculars. How can we support that want that the parents have while maybe bringing in some extra income for us as we are changing our programs and having to meet the needs? I do want to bring up advocacy. So maybe you don't have a lot of control. You're working for the state, the federal government, state subsidized, and nonprofits. You don't have a lot of control over what you pay your staff or how you are being paid. One thing that you can do is get involved in this advocacy work. So I was talking about this earlier. So a kindergarten teacher on average in the United States works for $25 an hour. $14 an hour for a preschool teacher. That's typically with like a permit or 24 units or something like that. And then $10 an hour for a childcare worker, like an aide or something like that who has less units. So there's a real discrepancy, almost $15 between a childcare worker and a $25 an hour teacher. So if you have your hands tied in salary and benefits, maybe consider joining an advocacy program like NIAC has the Worthy Wage, there's the Fight for 15, and then there's Teach, TEACH, it's all capital letters, it's an acronym, Teach Early Childhood. these have a little bit of a political bent. I'm not endorsing these programs. I'm just saying that there are advocacy programs that if you wanted to, you could get involved with as we try to kind of raise the prestige and hopefully raise the amount of money that we can make as a whole. So we all have a degree of financial responsibility, and that's what I was talking about last week in our discussion board, is what are you currently covering? Maybe you only get $150. You still have some responsibility. Maybe you get $1,500 over the entire year as a lump sum, but we need to decide to learn and know about financial management, and we need to practice those skills, and that's really up to us. So this is our second week of financial management. There'll be a short quiz. I'm not trying to be tricky. This is not where you have to hunt for information. I'm just trying to give you a little bit more of that financial knowledge so that you can practice the skill of kind of learning it. And then also we'll continue to work on our group projects as well this week. I think they're going fantastic. I know some of you have switched off of our discussion boards into your Google Docs or Collaborate or something like that. That's fantastic. I don't need to see it. I just need to know that you guys have turned the corner and everybody is hopefully gelling as a group. This is the type of year, though, that people are starting to drop classes. So if I drop people, which I have, and if people are dropping or just not participating, I will try to let you know as I am dropping them or as I am noticing that they are dropping themselves, so that you know to take those people out of your groups. Most groups have 9 to 8 people. Some of them might even drop it down to 7, but I still think that's a good enough number in order to do a 10-minute presentation at the end. So I will see you guys either in the discussion boards, or I'll know that you'll be working on it, and then you'll have a little quiz this week as well. So have a great week. Thanks so much.